And hello everybody, welcome back to Tousi TV. I am Dan, your host, and in today's video we're going to be discussing Starmer's latest cover-up. Yes, Starmer and the UK government have refused a crackdown in broadening the term or widening the term to extremism within this country and not cracking down, of course, on far-left activists. Of course, we're going to be unpacking this story, going through all of the details. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on this. But as always, guys, do get involved in the live chat. We'll take some comments a little bit later on. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this story. Yes, Starmer and the government have rejected internal advice to widen the definition of extremism to include potentially violent environmentalists, the far left, conspiracy theorists, and men prejudiced against women. This comes after sections of the report were leaked to the right-leaning policy exchange think tank, which criticised their recommendation. So essentially, guys, they don't want to, or the government do not want to crack down on the sort of far left extremism or count it as a part of the terminology. They don't want to crack down on anything else because they believe, currently the Home Secretary believes that, of course, they want to insist their efforts and must stay focused on Islamists and right-wing threats, which MI5 say dominate UK counter-terror work at 75% and 25% respectively. So despite, of course, internal reports and advice given to the government to crack down on extra subcultures, extreme misogyny, pro-Palestine extremism advocating for an independent Sikh state, Hindu nationalist extremism, environmental extremism, and of course left-wing activists or far left-wing activists, despite this internal advice being given to them, they do not want to broaden this term and keep their focus, of course, on the Islamist extremism and the far-right extremism there as well. So Dan Jarvis, of course, a Home Minister insider, essentially stated that, of course, they want to just focus their threats on the biggest threats that we currently face. And he said that these ideologies continue to be the heart of our approach to countering extremism and terror. So again, just to reiterate that, they do not want to crack down on this despite the internal advice given to them. Now, in terms of what a far-left extremism is, and of course, it is certainly two-tier because they're stating that 25% of this extremism as such is coming from the far right. However, anything from Antifa, eco-activists targeting businesses, vegans attacking restaurants, BLM banning white people from entering university campuses, all of that sort of pro-Palestine stuff where they're, chanting genocidal hatred, this sort of stuff in the eyes of the government shouldn't be cracked down upon, which is truly a disgrace. Genuinely, I know that the biggest threat, of course, within this country, as you can see there in the MI5 statistics, is, of course, the Islamist threat. Now, again, I'm surprised with this sort of far-left government that we currently have in place, that they are, they couldn't exactly hide that one down and bury that one down, most certainly, because they just wouldn't have got away with that, not bringing that to the forefront with regard to it being an extremist threat within this country. However, if I think they had their way, they probably would have tried to bury that one as well. But the numbers speak for itself, 75% taking it up. But of course, there is so much more in terms of different forms of extremism in this country, and if people are going to be targeting and the government are going to be targeting the far right, then most certainly the far left, as we all know on this channel, are a huge problem. And of course, as stated, I listed off a ton of things that they currently do, affecting businesses, genocidal chants at the pro-Palestine events, the Antifa lot, eco-activists, all of it. And it's a weird, despite them being given internal advice, they don't actually want to act upon it and crack down upon it. Now, of course, this far left socialist government that we have as the Labour Party aren't going to crack down on themselves, are they? Let's be perfectly honest. That just isn't going to happen. But Yeah, very, very surprising. Despite the internal advice they've been given, don't want to do anything about it, which is absolutely bonkers in my personal opinion. So that's that in terms of the actual story itself and what we've currently got. But the MI5 director, Ken McCallum, did say back in October that the biggest threat to this country, apparently, is, of course, the Islamist threats at 75%, which is absolutely huge. As always, guys, do let me know your thoughts on this down there in the comments in the live chat. I'm going to jump into the live chat in a moment and speak about it. But what do you make about this? Do you think it's fair as such? Do you think that the government are doing the right thing, the wrong thing? As stated, let me know what you're thinking down there in the comment section below or the live chat below. Let's take our first one, guys. We've got a super chat coming in from Mike. So big shout out to Mike here. Thank you so much for your £5 donation. He says, I noticed that the two-tier queer, including Hindu nationalism in the far right, how many Hindus have rioted or even caused trouble in living memory in the UK? Good point, Mike. I can't think of anything, to be perfectly honest with you. Good point, but thank you so much for your donation. Let's go through some more of the live chats, ladies and gentlemen. Do get involved and do let me know what you think with regard to this story. Melanie K just simply says Starmer is the biggest threat to this country. Absolutely, absolutely agree. This Labour government are certainly backwards. Let's see what else people are saying. Oh, sorry. Oh, I got the wrong chat there. Jenny Welsh. Big shout out to Jenny Welsh. She says, how is he allowed to get away with this? Well, the way that they're looking at it at this moment in time, they don't want to broaden it. They want to focus not necessarily on or they want to focus more on the ideologies of stuff rather than the threats as such. But this has been internal advice being given to the government to actually act upon it and crack down on these certain forms and widen the term for extremism. But of course, you do see the far left always get away with it. Now, looking at some of these guys in terms of the examples that have been given there, again, it's something that, of course, would need to and would count as extremism. Again, yes, you can say that the two of the biggest threats are there is the Islamist and, if you do want to say, the far right. Again, quotations, the far right at 25%. Don't really necessarily agree with those numbers, but if they want to say that, then the far left should certainly be in that as well, because they're causing absolute mayhem, and of course their ideologies are dangerous as well. Or their ideologies are dangerous. Certainly what we see happen every single week anyway from the far left. So the fact that they don't want to broaden that and count them into it is extremely worrying. And of course, you can't necessarily be surprised, of course, with Keir Starmer and the Labour government not dubbing themselves into this extremism threat. Let's go through some more of the chat, ladies and gentlemen. This is a good point. Not being funny, but do you really want them expanding the definition to include misogyny, a word that was thrown around to the drop of the hat? Again, yes, look, certainly, again, I'm not going to just be this sort of guy that disagrees with absolutely anything that the Labour government says. And again, yes, terms, I mean, it becomes very, very dangerous when you're sort of adding misogyny or, this masculinism or whatever it is into this equation. It can be very, very dangerous. And you actually make a very good point. Do you want them to be expanding the definition to include that? Well, some of the examples that have been given that we read through at the start of the live stream, not necessarily. Again, my personal opinion, I do think it's a fine line of what you do, of course, attach as extremism. But of course, it's more of the thing where they're saying the far right are the problem at the 25%, but the far left are not a problem whatsoever. That's more where I'm kind of looking at it and going, yeah, well, why not tie them in? Yes, I think it needs to have a little look at and make it different. But of course, as you're saying there, it's a fine line of adding absolutely everything that could be deemed as offensive into an extremism threat and widening the meaning and putting that into there. So I do agree with that. I do think that is a fine line. And yeah, you don't necessarily want that to happen. But then again, I'm speaking on a behalf as a man here. Other people may, of course, think a bit different. I'm not too sure. But do let me know your thoughts and opinion. But he makes a very, very good point. Let's have a little look here again. John says, where is the far right? What have they done lately? Again, this is the report that came out from the MI5 back in October. They stated that currently as a country, we face 75% from Islamist threat and, of course, 25% from the far right. I always put the quotations there, far right threat. Now, again, I don't know. I don't see it personally in terms of this far right threat as such, in terms of extremism as such. Of course, there was people that went too far over the summer in terms of rioting and stuff like that. But from a perspective of it making up 25%, I don't really see. And again, maybe we need to broaden the term of far right, because it's a term that's just thrown onto everyone. I mean, if you're conservative now, you're far right, or if you don't want illegal immigration, you're far right. So what actually constitutes as someone as far right in the government's eyes is it's just anybody that doesn't like their views and their sort of values. So again, I think that needs a bit of term that needs to be broadened on, because everybody's far right by the looks of things from the Labour government and Keir Starmer. If you disagree with them, you're far right. Or you don't like illegal immigration, you're far right. You don't like certain things, you're far right, which is not the case. We need to have a conversation on that. What constitutes as somebody that is of far right ideologies? Because again, I've got a completely different definition of what someone is far right. But all of us watching this live stream in the government's eyes are dubbed as far right, essentially. It's bonkers, you're right, but something needs to be having a looked at. And John, you make a good point. Where is the far right? What have they done lately? I don't know. That's how fine the line is. Let's have a little look. Some more comments here. Let's have a look. Joe says, exactly, Dan, true Brits who love their country and culture are far right. Again, I've just spoke about it there, but you're absolutely correct. It just keeps on coming up. And I don't think we've actually got a definition in the Labour government's eyes as to someone who is far right, or people are part of a group who are far right. I just don't understand it. Let's have a little look at more. Krumba says, if Starmer continues with his political two-tiering system, he will end up causing a civil war. Again, it's just a conversation to be had, having this thing. And again, I'm looking at it, and I'm with one of the comments that came in here. If I'm looking at everything that the internal report, of course, came out and said, look, we need to address this, we need to address that, and you should count all of this as an extremism threat, I don't necessarily agree with absolute everything on that list. No, I don't. Of course I don't. But of course, then you're looking at that two-tier political system of this far right. But certainly I need to be cleared up, and I need to be informed myself what constitutes somebody as far right. Because in Starmer's eyes, again, it's absolutely everyone that disagrees with what he says is far right. As I said, conservatives now are being called far right, which is absolutely bonkers, because conservatives aren't far right at all. So yeah, I mean, make it make sense. Let's have a little look at some more comments. Dodge says, what does the far right think now? Starmer has branded the wrong people with the same tag. I don't know. But is that conversation to have? I want a definition on what far right constitutes, especially when you're talking about extremism. You've got a prime minister here who's saying that everybody's far right, that fits into his category, and then comes out publicly bashing this far right, etc. But again, there is no definition. They basically saying that everybody that he's dubbed as far right is an extremist threat to this country. I don't know. I mean, that's why I need a bit more clarity on what constitutes somebody as far right, especially looking at a report like that. Mike, again, thank you so much for your generosity. Another super chat from Mike. He says, I'm not far right, I'm absolutely right. Nice one, love that. But thank you so much for your £2 donation there, my man. What a absolute hero. Let's take some more non-super chats. I've got this here. Ronald says, we are not racist people. Absolutely. I mean, look, everybody is got to be looked at very subjectively, in terms of everybody is completely different. But the movement that's been currently created, British patriots all being put into a bandwagon of far right and racist, is just absolutely lazy name calling. Because again, I would probably get called, for operating the channels that I do, presenting here or presenting wherever. The left would dub me as someone as far right or racist, when I've never ever said a racist term ever come out of my mouth, and I'm not a racist person. I'm a very I'm a very conservative person, very I don't no racism from me at all. And again, it's just very, very lazy from the far left, and very lazy from the left in general and the Labour government, that anyone that has a certain view on something is then automatically labelled as a racist or as a far right, or all of these kind of horrible names that you just can't constitute to calling somebody. But it's completely lazy from them. They just call you that. Because they have nothing else to say, not intelligent enough to expand their argument, and it's just an easy way to try and shut down someone's argument by just going, oh, you're racist, shut up, or you're far right, shut up, and then that's it. But then they can't have the conversation when you actually prove to them and say, well, I've never ever said anything racist in my life, I've never ever said anything that is deemed far right. But again, they're just so lazy and just call you that just to try and shut you down in an argument or a conversation. Let's have a little look here again. We've got Dazman says, Dan, Ronald J is a troll. £2 donation. What did he say, Ronald J? Is he a troll? Is he a troll, Tousi TV chat? As I said, I'm still fairly new to the live streams, guys. So yeah. We've also got one from Angry PMC. He is a supporter for 2 months. Hey, my green name tag is back. Sorry, carry on with the conversation at hand. Thank you so much for your member chat there. Legend. Let's have a little look more again here. Stephen Hart makes a good point. He says the labels don't work anymore. They are thrown around far too freely. Again, you're absolutely correct. These labels that people just give people for having a certain, not necessarily a belief, but a certain view on way life is. As stated, if you're a conservative now, you're far right and racist. That's how the world is going right now. I just can't believe it. I mean, conservative, far right, racist. It's kind of crazy, right? But that's the way that they work. That's the way that their brains work. They literally just call you anything just to try and rise above you in a conversation or an argument. But absolutely false. It's crazy. But again, back to this. I mean, Starmer is always going to protect his own and terms of the far left, and of course is not going to be looking for a crackdown on them because they cause a lot of drama. I listed off loads of things that the far left activists are doing that could constitute being put in that same bracket, but of course won't be looked at in general. Let's take some more comments, guys. The trolls. So guys, you got to tell me who the trolls are in the Tousi TV world. Who's the trolls? I like to speak to the trolls. Let's have a little look. Okay, so Andrew says, hear a screaming shout, we want this government out. Well, just more onto the fact though, guys, because I know I read off a lot of things that the internal report said about the extremism, and they were saying that it should be, they should widen the definition of extremism. And I did list off a lot of subcategories, including, of course, extreme misogyny, pro-Palestine extremism, advocating for an independent state, Hindu nationalist extremism, environmental extremism, left-wing, far left-wing activists, violence, fascination, and conspiracy theories. Do you think all of those should be constituted anyway into this, into the definition, or be brought into widening the definition of extremism? Let me know in the comments. Again, because I know it's very, very subjective. I don't think necessarily everyone's going to to back that. Of course, I've seen a comment there about misogyny and something like that. Sometimes you can go down a different route, but my focus more so is looking at the far left there as such. You know, if they're going to be saying far right, then why not far left also in that subcategory if it's being made up of 25%? I would like to see those statistics, because what constitutes as far right extremism? I don't completely get it. I've got my definition. I know what that would constitute. However, I think the term is just freely thrown around too much these days that we don't actually know what that is. This is a very grey area within this country at this moment in time. We've got another super chat from Jenny Welsh. Thank you so much for your £2 donation, Jenny. She says Ronald is a massive troll. I thought Ronald made a good point earlier. So if he is a troll, then I apologize, but he did bring up a good comment, and I didn't necessarily see it as a trolling comment as such. We've got another super chat, guys, so thank you so much for your generosity this morning. I really, really do appreciate it, and I'm sure Maya does also. But Davey donates £5. He says, I want Trump to ask Starmer what is a woman. Would be very interesting. But at this moment in time, Trump, as I said, again, take it what you will. Everyone's taking their opinion on what Trump was saying about Keir Starmer, but, of course, did say that he's doing a good job at this moment in time. Is it to try and get him on his side and not or put him into a corner to not be able to speak bad about Trump? Is it tactical? Is it 4D chess from Trump saying all that publicly? Or is it what he actually thinks? Karen donates £8. Thank you so much, Karen, for your donation. £8. And Karen says the far right is the white working class. Again, that is the kind of definition that I have from the Labour government. If you're working class and white or a British patriot, or you like the Union Jack, I do see that as how the Labour government and Keir Starmer constitutes and describes somebody as far right. I think you're right with that. I genuinely do. I think that's the way they look at describing the far right. Again, I agree with that in terms of their opinion. I don't agree with that, of course, being the actual reason. But thank you so much for your donation. Let's have a little look at some more. Told the truth, yeah. I'll take one more comment, guys, and then I'll round up. But David says, Two-tier Care is happy to keep quoting the mythical far right, but the real threat is the far left. Again, I do believe the far left are a huge threat to this society and the Western world in general. And again, I do absolutely agree with it. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. That is it. A good time to sign off on. But thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Let's carry on the conversation in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on all of what we discussed? Do stick around. Mayor's going to be back with a lot more content later on today. Some more live streams and all that good stuff. I've been Dan. This has been Tousi TV, and we are the media.